All right. Ever since that one day when we had all those issues with the live stream, every time I go press go live lately, I've been like, is it going to work? Is it going to work? Luckily today it's working well. Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? Wilson, good to see you. Good morning to you. And welcome to the Coffee Q&A, our daily coffee discussion. Well, daily until Friday. And we're going to have a hiatus. Like you may have not heard, but we're going to take a hiatus for about a month where we're going to be hanging out while I'm going to be tearing all this apart. But we'll get to that later. Baldhead, good morning. Baldhead, Curtis, I'm Craig. I was reading the one book about the cafes, not the one about different designs, but the other one you sent. I forgot the title, but I was at Chick-fil-A last night having dinner, and so I was reading. And they're interesting stuff, really fascinating. There's a lot to read. Really great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the books. And the cutter time is tomorrow. I haven't even looked at it. Have not even taken it out of its box, so I don't even know what it looks like. So I kept it that way so that my reaction would be pretty authentic on that live stream. Mom, good morning, man. Good to see you. How are things? All right, so today, I guess our big topic is really about one of my friends in the industry, a guy by the name of Gianni. His real name is Gianni Cassatini. And if you're not familiar with him, Gianni is a kind of this associate of Nuova Simonelli. He's not necessarily an employee of Nova. They call him public relations. And, it could be like waste management. No, I'm just kidding. But he's a really great guy. Unfortunately, he passed away from cancer on Sunday. And Gianni is a really important member of the coffee community, especially the coffee competition community. He's traveled around the world, meeting baristas, going to championships, and just generally spreading goodwill and friendship and support and enthusiasm for the craft and for the different competitors. So, Eric, good morning. How are you? So Eric says he saw the obit in a coffee blog. Yeah. It's for those of us that know him, it's a really kind of it is a sad moment. We're not going to be sad here because Gianni was never sad. Even when the last time I saw him in April back in Portland, when he was already with cancer, he's still in good spirits. So we want to maintain that. And that's why I'm wearing my tracksuit today. This is my Nuova Simonelli tracksuit. And Ben Brown and the guys at Nuova USA, they're based in Bellingham. They gave this to me years ago, man. They were like, I was like, dude, that's a dope looking tracksuit. They're like, you want one? I was like, oh yeah, man, you have it my size? They're like, yeah, all right. So thanks, man. That's great. So I've been wearing this. And the truth be told, I've always been a La Marzocco guy, right? That's really where I started, and that's what I learned, and that's what I've used. But I love Simonelli. They're really great. And so how this Simonelli thing came about is, let's before we get into that, let's go to our coffee so that we can get started with the brewing, and then we can talk more. All right, so today's coffee is going to be an espresso blend called the Pear Notes. It's a blend of Pear Notes espresso from Nicaragua, as well as Guacacayo from Colombia. This is actually made by Matt from Park and Perk. He wanted me to taste it, and I tried it a little bit. Now this is for espresso, and the espresso machines are all packed up. They're already gone. Like my one tabletop one is already at my house now, so I have no way to actually make an espresso. So what we're just going to brew it as a V60 just to get the flavor. I think it's a nice way to go. And here's the thing. So people will say, like, there's always this talk about, people always say this coffee is just for espresso. That coffee's not for espresso. But really, any coffee can be used in an espresso machine. Espresso is just another way of brewing coffee, or just another one of your many tools that you can use to make coffee. So I don't really necessarily have a problem you going back and forth, like pour over or French press and then espresso with a coffee. Now, we will take coffees and we will design them in certain ways so that under the pressure of an espresso machine, it will concentrate flavors in different ways or in certain ways that we're trying to cultivate. But for me, that's more what an espresso blend is, right? Like for me, classic espresso blend is going to be chocolatey with some fruity notes would be really nice, and good body, and then nice lingering finish with a nutty note to it. And those are things that we're going to be blending or selecting coffees and blending the coffees to achieve those kind of, and then roasting them to achieve those notes in an espresso. Now, it may be very vibrant as an espresso, but maybe a little bit flat when it's brewed because of that design difference, right? But for the most part, you can use any coffee in any brewing device back and forth. But of course, a lot of people for their espresso blends, especially a little more older school guys, will make it very dark or darker to get more of that robustness, right? I mean, I don't know if I like that. I probably don't like that as much as I don't really like the super light and bright and acidic kind of espressos that's super popular with a lot of people today. Like, that's not my jam. Like, Tim Windabo and I will like get into it every once in a while when we're hanging out. I'll be like, oh, no, that's not the right way. No, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. But of course, that's just friendly banter between old friends. All right, so let's go to the coffee. Let's have a look at it first. What we're going to do is we're going to, Dan, good morning. Welcome to the show. How you doing? So we've got our coffee here. Now, this is probably, I'll be honest, this is probably about a month old. So we're getting some oiliness. This coffee was not roasted to the point where the oils were emanating during the roast. These oils that you're seeing, a little bit like these little specks, are starting to come out now because it's been about a month, maybe a month and a half. I tend not to worry too much about time. Like, I found coffees to improve, like coffees will become much better or something like that about a month. And then 2 months, 3 months later, still solid. Unless you're talking about something super delicate that may have only a tiny window. And of course, as a coffee roaster, we would encourage you to buy what you need for a week so that you can buy next week, so that we can sell more coffee next week, so that we can pay our rent and pay our staff. These are some of the realities that are like, but if you buy all your coffee at once for a whole like 6 months, then it's like, how am I going to pay rent next month? How am I going to pay rent month? How am I going to buy my Ferrari? So these are the things that I don't really know any coffee roasters that own Ferraris. Don't get me wrong. Okay, so let's weigh out some coffee. We're going to do our typical recipe here, 2 grams for every finished ounce. To make 12 ounces, we're going to do 24 grams. In case you're wondering, I did wash my hands before we started, so. And I would not normally do this in a cafe setting. There it is, 24. Perfect. All right, so looking good. Let's grind some of this up here. We're going to be doing a pour over, so we're going to go for like a medium grind. On our compact R80. Eric's asking, are you roasting a lot of extra coffee in anticipation of moving? Yes, there will be a point where we're going to start. I'm actually just waiting for the warehouse to transport some of the coffees here, and then we'll be roasting pretty hard for, really, for like commercial accounts, I don't really want to get too far ahead, like maybe just a few weeks, because I do have a lot of friends in the business here. So, that we've always worked together so that, I can readily go to any of them and be like, hey, could I, use your roaster? And either they'll let me use it or I'll just pay a little fee to, toll roast on their machines. So I'm not too worried about that, but we'll probably do a few weeks worth of a lead time. What we're calculating for our wholesale accounts to do. Probably will suspend most of, maybe I'll roast some stuff for online sales, but probably will suspend some of that during the time period, because if we're going to be roasting to order, like on the bag level, that's going to be much more difficult, especially since we won't have a facility to work out of. But we'll see. I don't know. There's a lot of questions that are still in the mind that have not been settled. Oh, what do I need here? I need filters. I was thinking, did I pack the filters already? Because most of the stuff here is packed. Well, a lot of it is packed away. But Friday afternoon or Friday after the show, the packing will go en masse. All right, so we've got our V60. Here's our typical V60 clear plastic. I like the clear plastic just because it's a visually pretty thing, right? All right, we're gonna put the filter in here, just folding over a typical Melita number 4. Level that out. Okay, so there's our, okay, you can see everything, good. You just boil the water again. So when I first started out in coffee, my mentor, John Sanders, ran a place called Heinz Public Market Coffee in Seattle, Washington, in the Eastlake neighborhood. And so I met John fortuitously around 2003. And we became quick friends, and it was very strange. Like, he's this guy, a nice guy, and he, was very involved in, especially a third wave, what was then burgeoning as third wave. And for some reason, he welcomed me into his circle, into the fold of Heinz. I'm some guy, I'm totally green, have no idea what's going on, barely know how to make espresso, and based on the East Coast. But gosh, the guy was so open, and so we got to be friends, and I learned a lot about coffee from him. But he was also very involved in the World Barista Championship, so he encouraged me. He brought me along to judge, and I competed, and then I was helping out with the volunteering. So I ran a lot of the stations at the World Barista Championship for La Marzocco, because we got to know the guys from La Marzocco, like Kent Baki and them, very, very well. And Kees van der Westen, because he was buying parts from La Marzocco, became friends with him as well. And eventually the WBC, the World Barista Championship, was going to get a new contract. They renew the contract every 3 years or something like that. And so I was very involved with working with La Marzocco, installing the machines, tearing them down, and then they had the new system. They had the new bidding process. Nuova Simonelli just outbid everybody. They just put a lot of money behind it and came in. Nuova Simonelli, especially back then, was still a very relatively big company, a lot of resources, a lot of capital, a lot of operations. And they could afford to set up machines for the year and just tour them around the circuit, right? Whereas La Marzocco, they would have machines that they would use at, let's say, a regional competition, but they would use it at the regional, and then they'd have to sell it so that they could recoup some of that cost. And they would do that for every one. Whereas Nuova was like, okay, we're going to designate these machines. We're going to put them in the cases. We're going to transport them around. We're going to send a whole bunch of people with them. So a lot of what I did with La Marzocco, setting up the machines, maintaining them, testing them, calibrating them, was all handled by technicians like Ben Brown from Nuova Simonelli. So Nuova had so much more resources. And Gianni was this guy who kind of came along with everyone, right? Oh, Michael, how are you, man? Good to see you. Oh, yes, of course. Oh, Uncle Michael, how are you, man? Good to see you. I saw that things went well for the competition in Japan. Glad to hear it. So we're there, and what was I saying? So Gianni comes to the events. Yeah, he comes to the events, and you can't miss him. He's about this tall, right? Older gentleman. Now Gianni first came to America, I think, in the late 60s. Well, not to America. He came to Canada. He went to Montreal. Essentially, the story that I read was that he went to Montreal, and when in 1967 or something like that, and he brings his Alfa Romeo Spider Veloce, right, which is that long, elongated, convertible, super nice, from the 80s, from that era. And he arrives in Montreal, and he drives across the country to Burnaby, which is just south. I think it's just south of Vancouver, because that's where he lived, outside of Vancouver. Meets some people, meets his wife. He's introduced to his wife Delia. They get married. They were married for 54 years. My entire existence on this planet, they've been married. So it's really beautiful to see couples last a long time. My parents have been together for about as long, maybe a little bit longer. But more or less the same. So it's really, really lovely to see that, especially in modern times and when everything seems a little bit less committed. But evidently and I know he worked in an industry before, but he worked for Johnson Controls doing some kind of technical work for them for 30 years. He had a full career at Johnson Controls. And then after he retired, one of his friends somehow worked with Simonelli and he became associated with them and he just started traveling to all the events. It was like, who's this dude, right? 2010, we're like there and he's like, who's this dude? He's so like friendly and jovial and like, you really enjoy spending time with him and talking to him. Aztec, how are you? Good to see you. Buongiorno, buongiorno. All right, let's get to the brewing here. We've got our coffee. We're going to put some water into our pot. All right, so yesterday we talked about maybe paying a little more attention to what I'm doing here. So, okay, we're going to do this. What I like to do is, what I figured out is that about 25 grams, so this coffee will hold about 25 grams. So roughly the equivalent weight, right? 24 grams of coffee, it will hold 24 grams of water evenly, carefully distributed without falling through the filter, right? It'll hold that much. So what I do is I like to just start. I'm just going to pulse it. Actually, commercially, I've never really done this pulsing thing, but let's see here. We're going to go to 24. Oh, too much already. Now it's already flowing through. So I hit the side, it shot through. So much for that. Okay, now we're going to go to 85 grams, more or less. So really, I like to do, I traditionally have done about 85 grams for the initial bloom phase. Of course, we're a little bit behind. Now that's raised the bed. So like it raises the bed a bit, and I kind of like to keep the bed at this height or whatever height that we raise it to. And so as it falls, I'll raise it a little bit back up. And what I'm trying to do is also just make sure that all the coffee is saturated. I'm not so worried about like staying in concentric circles or whatever that the other prescriptions are. I just want to make sure that the coffee is saturated, because if the coffee is not saturated, it's not extracting and you're not getting the flavor out of it, right? So if you brew coffee and you only have, let's say 20 of your 24 grams, in contact with the water, then you're only getting 20 grams worth of extraction. And so I'm kind of timing. So we had 160. We want to be around 200 in about 30 seconds. So yeah, this looks like we're on time. Unlike other times when we have not been very good at this. Okay, 200. I'm going to let the timer catch up a little bit. I also want to keep it a continuous extraction and continuous flow. Like I mentioned yesterday or the other day when someone asked, well, what's my favorite brewing method? This is why this is not my favorite brewing method for, let's say, for my personal brewing, because I have to give a lot of attention to it. Now, I will brew this at times, just gun it with coffee, with water. But if you want to have a nice brew, you kind of want to take your time. So to 230, we're a little bit behind. We probably should be at 250 by now. We're 100 grams away, but that's all right. Actually, we only have to do 50 in the last minute. We might be a little bit behind. So in this kind of case, I would think that maybe, depending on how it turns out, maybe we could be a little bit coarser. Right? I'm going to add a little bit more water to the kettle. Uncle Michael says, I don't know, but I just pour the coffee inside there and put water, then drink the damn thing. Tastes good. Absolutely, absolutely. You don't have to go crazy like this. This is this. Oh, so now we are. Well, now we're behind. Now we're behind because I'm talking too much. And actually, for the rest of you guys, Uncle Michael de la Cruz is actually one of my other mentors in the world. He was my kumu hula, which is a hula teacher, hula master, and I studied with him for what, 3-4 years, and we did wonderful things like going to the World Championships of what essentially are the Olympics of hula, which was truly a highlight of my life experience. All right, so 4 minutes, 3:50. We still have some, so we're a little bit long. What we want to do is now we want to, if this is our workflow, the next coffee I would make, I would go slightly coarser, right? And I'm also paying attention now to see how much time are we going to have. We're still flowing through 4:20, 4:30, right? So maybe just a little bit coarser for the next brew, right? And of course, this is going to be a lot easier for someone like myself in a commercial environment where you're making coffee after coffee after coffee. So you can make these adjustments slightly throughout your day as needed. But then, of course, if you're only making 1 or 2 cups a day, it's going to take you a little bit longer to I guess, dial it in, or something like that. All right, so here we are. It's pretty much done. 4:55. So nice thing about the V60, you can just kind of take it out, dump it there. Then we're just going to rinse. I can just rinse that out. And as long as there's no buildup of, like whatever coffee crud, you're pretty much done. You can just let it air. I just tend to let it air dry and not worry too much about it. Like I will take it, I will probably take it today and have it washed, just do a little soap and water on it. All right, so let's have a look at our elixir. And Eric says, I enjoy geeking out on my brewing. I usually aim my spout in an area where the bubbles look different. No idea why. Oh, where the bubbles look different. That's an interest. I'll have to try to pay attention to that next time. Maybe tomorrow, maybe not. We may go to that other brewer, the Habia Conves. So there it is. It looks a little bit darker. Like we don't have that like lightness in the brew that we see in some other coffees, but that's all right. Let's get some aromatics. But the clarity, it is clear. It does have clarity. There's a slightly, I want to say roastiness to the nose, but I don't know if that's really the correct way to describe that. It's definitely robust. Ooh, a lot of bitterness. Like I think that bitterness would be really nice and heavy in an espresso format, right? Like nice and just kind of. Okay, we're gonna let that cool down a little bit and see how it performs, how it might change. I think the bitterness right now is very forward, very heavy, robust body. Like this is definitely like this is definitely an example where like you have a coffee that has a bit of robustness, but it is not terribly dark, right? It's relative. It looks darker on my screen, but in person it looks lighter. But I think this is an example of where like when you're designing espresso for that robustness, that body, that kind of like punchiness, that's going to go, as an espresso by itself, or here, especially here in America, with milk, right? You need something that's going to stand up to that milkiness, right? So that you'll still get that nice coffee flavor mixed in, especially when you're making lattes. Your lattes are now, 2 ounces maybe of espresso to 8 ounces or 12 ounces, 8 to 10 to 12 ounces of milk. So there's a lot of dilution. So you need something that's going to stand up to that. And I think this as an espresso would, because it's a relatively, for a brewed coffee, it's got a lot of robustness so far. But yeah, like I was saying, so Gianni, he came to the scene and he's always around, and like, I got to know him quite a bit and see him, pretty much a few times a year. And it's really, really special guy. Hopefully and there's nothing can be bad to be said about him. But of course, who knows? Like, he had a whole career before this. Maybe he was some tough guy at Johnson Controls and, you know, busted some balls or whatever. But now that after retirement, he's all like, I'm happy now. I can relax and like do what I want. And that's pretty much what he did. He would just kind of like come around, hang out, and just be around. And actually, I've included some links in the description below for you to check out. There is a link to his Instagram feed, so you can see kind of his adventures that he's been on through his own lens. There is an obituary from the funeral home that tells you a little bit more about that. There's also an article by Sarah Allen, the editor of Barista Magazine. Sarah's traveled a lot with Gianni and knew Gianni really well as well. She wrote a really pretty piece on him. And then there's a thread that I included from homebarista.com that actually has a couple of interview videos with Les Kwan. And if you're not familiar with Les Kwan is this guy up in Canada. He lives in Western Canada, I believe. I've known Les for a long time. And he's been the guy behind the Canadian National Barista Championship. And he's always struggled to like bring a great quality championship to Canada. Like, he's someone that's an enthusiast, wants, partially in the business, but really a great character, a great soul, a great person who's just, been trying to make his way in coffee. Really worthy of support, I think. But he's got a nice looking interview. I didn't really get to watch it. I just saw it, so I included it here. But I think it'll be a good video for if you're interested in seeing Gianni and hear him talk. I'm sure he's telling his life story. I'll probably watch that a little bit later today. All right, let's have a look at more of the coffee. Yeah, definitely. Bitterness has toned down. That's cool. Now we're getting some roundness, some creamy characters. Like, the body feels a bit creamy now. I don't really get a lot of distinct, like for me, I want to have distinct chocolate notes, distinct fruity notes. I'm not getting those. It's really just this more rounded, bodied, creamy coffeeness. Not terribly distinct with any flavor spikes. But nice. Can't say anything bad about it. All right, cool. A nice coffee, softer but robust. It's got good body, like nice full body. I would say this is a full bodied coffee, a little bit creamy now. The bitterness has been toned down since it was hotter. Overall, very enjoyable. I think actually this coffee, even in its brewed form, would go very nicely with cream and sugar. If you were the kind of person that's drinking cream and sugar, this would actually go nice with it. Much as I expect this coffee made in an espresso machine would go well as a cappuccino. Like, if you were to make your cappuccino, I tend to drink cappuccinos, not really lattes much. And basically, I'll have the cappuccino. I think this would stand up well to it, right? Give nice balance to the milky sweetness, the bitter and the heavier body, right, of the coffee. Like, I do love nice cappuccinos. So I remember when I was at Heinz in Seattle, the times I would be there, get up in the morning, maybe like 6 o'clock, shop just open. And the way Heinz was positioned on East Lake Avenue, it was I guess, eastern frontage, right? So sun would come up, sunlight streaming in the early morning, and I would get a little cappuccino, double shot, 6 ounce, in an Illy cup. They used Illy cups. I used Illy cups because of that. And you sit there, and I just remember sitting there drinking and like listening to Dr. Dre, The Chronic. Good times. All right. So I guess that's it. We've got our coffee here. the Guacacayo, a blend of Guacacayo from Colombia, as well as the pear notes from Nicaragua, roasted by Matt at Park and Perk. Nice. Now that it's cooled down, it's softer, still very good body, rounded, but just kind of this nice general like coffee character. No real distinct notes. I was expecting the pear notes to have a little bit more fruitiness, but it's not so apparent at this moment. All right, I guess that's it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. And thank you for indulging my discussion about Gianni. We will miss him in the coffee community. He was a wonderful man, dearly loved by many people, including myself. So, all right, tomorrow we'll be back again. Sadly, we've only got 2 more episodes of the daily coffee Q&A for this until we take our hiatus, and I have to move. But I'll keep you guys up to date as we go along. Thank you, Bum. Have a great one. So, back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Hope you'll be here. If not, catch you on the replay. And see you next time. Thanks, Michael.